The name Eleanora Fagan may not be familiar to you, but under the stage name Billie Holiday, she became one of the most influential jazz vocalists in history, emerging as a defining voice of her generation. But sadly, she also endured more than her fair share of tragedy. The story of Billie Holiday's early childhood is cloudy. Even her real name is a matter of debate. But by most accounts, she was born April 7, 1915 in Philadelphia to teenager Sadie Fagan. Her father was musician Clarence Holiday. She spent her formative years in jazz-soaked Baltimore, where she lived in poverty. She dropped out of school in 5th grade and did 2 stints in a Catholic reform school, the second after being abducted and assaulted by a 40-year-old neighbor. At the reformatory school, Holiday found her singing voice, but also endured horrific treatment. Holiday recalled in her autobiography, Lady Sings the Blues, that while she wasn't permitted to sleep in the dormitory with the other girls, and at one point was locked in a room with a dead girl. By the age of 13, she and her mother had moved to New York City, where things somehow got worse, and Billie became the victim of sex trafficking. The authorities, instead of helping her, arrested her and sent her to prison on prostitution charges. By 14, Holiday and her mother were out of jail but still desperately poor. Holiday wrote in her autobiography, "This is the truth. Mother and I were starving. It was cold. Mother was a housemaid and couldn't find work. I tried scrubbing floors too, but I just couldn't do it." Instead, she began singing for tips at local jazz clubs. It provided enough money for them to live on, but at the age of 18, Holiday hit it big when she was discovered by Benny Goodum's record producer. She soon had gigs in movies and as the lead singer for famous band leaders Count Basie and Artie Shaw, but life on the road was far from glamorous. While touring, she was often forced to use the service elevator so as not to upset white patrons, prohibited from eating with the rest of the band, and confined to a dark room until she took the stage to entertain the same patrons who wouldn't share her elevator. On one occasion, a member of the crowd shouted a racial slur at her during a song. Holiday reportedly lost her temper and was escorted off stage, cutting the performance short. Billie Holiday skyrocketed to fame in 1939 with the independent recording of Strange Fruit, an unforgiving, haunting poem about lynchings of African Americans. The at the time graphic portrayal of racial violence became a sensation, but it also put her squarely in the crosshairs of the federal government. According to Joanne Harry, author of Chasing the Scream, The First and the Last Days of the War on Drugs, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics heard rumblings of Holiday's heroin use, and when she continued to speak out against racial violence and injustice during the Jim Crow era, the feds used her heroin addiction as an excuse to silence her. In 1947, she was busted for heroin possession, and instead of being sent to hospital and get well as she requested, she was sentenced to a year and a day in federal prison. She came out clean, sober, and a convict, unable to secure the necessary license to perform in cabarets and clubs. Not long after her release, however, the defiant Holiday played at the Carnegie Hall. Holiday had several important romantic relationships in her life, but all were doomed by the shadow of drugs and domestic violence. In 1941, she married Jimmy Monroe, who introduced Holiday first to opium and then to heroin. The marriage ended shortly thereafter, but her drug usage continued with a new boyfriend, Joey Guy. In her memoir, Holiday recalled spending the heights of her career in luxury and a haze of drugs. "I spent the rest of the war years on 52nd Street and a few other streets. I had the white gowns and the white shoes, and every night they'd bring me the white gardenas and the white junk. Holiday was unrepentant about her drug use, but in 1957 she married Louis Mackay and temporarily got clean. But Mackay was abusive and swindled her out of her fortune. They soon separated, and Holiday fell back into the drug use and heavy drinking. In 1959, she was admitted to the hospital with cirrhosis of liver. Even then, the government wouldn't leave her in peace. While literally dying on her deathbed, she was arrested for drug possession and was reportedly handcuffed to the gunnery and placed under police guard. She died there at the age of 44 with less than $1 left in her bank account. Though punctuated by tragedy, Billie Holiday's life speaks much more to the triumph of perseverance, the strength of conviction, and the courage to bring voice to racial injustice. She made the Downbeat Hall of Fame in 1961, and shortly after, nearly 100 of her greatest records from the early years were restored. Her catalogue is in wide release to this day. In 1970s, her memoir, Lady Sings the Blues, made it to the big screen, starring Diana Ross, who earned an Oscar nod for her portrayal of Holiday. In death, Holiday had granted more than 20 Grammy wins or nominations so far, and in 2000, the woman lovingly known as Lady Day was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Ross. It's been more than 50 years since Holiday's death, and though she left the world as poor as she entered it, we are richer for having her voice as a testament to a hard life that shaped a legendary lady.